means less extreme weather and less disruption and suffering. Justin Rolat, BBC News.
Let's talk about this now with Michael Mann, director of the Penn Center for Science, Sustainability, and the Media at the University of Pennsylvania. He is also the author of the book Science Under Siege. Michael, thank you so much for joining us on our program tonight. Just first of all, this warning of 1.5 degrees Celsius, does this essentially mean that there is no way of reaching that point?
Yeah, well, I thought your correspondent did a very good job in sort of characterizing the challenge. We've got this finite budget. And if you calculate where we'll be in just a few years, if we continue to emit carbon at the current rate, we will expend that budget. We will have emitted enough carbon to ensure that the planet will rise above 1.5 Celsius. The math is unforgiving in that calculation. And so what that means is that we haven't physically passed that limit yet, but we need substantial policy progress. We need to see carbon emissions come down precipitously in just a few years. And that's thanks to several, decades of relative inaction when we could have been bringing our carbon emissions down, and we haven't. Because of that now, that window of opportunity is almost closed. But your correspondent also made another extremely important point. This isn't like a cliff that we go off at 1.5 Celsius. Every fraction of a degree matters. So if we do pass 1.5, 1.6 is a whole lot better than 1.7, and 1.7 is a whole lot better than 1.8. So at this point, the challenge is to reduce carbon emissions as quickly as we can to avert ever worse impacts, like the ones we're seeing play out this summer in real time in Europe, in the UK, and here in the United States.
Yes, with this heat dome effect that we were talking about. But Michael, there doesn't seem to be, at this point, the political will globally to actually address those policy points, does there?
Well, it's not quite that simple. We are making progress. We are moving away from fossil fuels towards renewable energy. We're just not making enough progress fast enough. So let's recognize that we're starting to turn the corner. And that's because of incentives that are in place. That's because of the commitments that many of the countries of the world have made at recent global climate negotiations, conferences, the COPs. We have seen commitments made by the countries of the world that, if honored and honored on time, have the ability to keep warming at least below 2 degrees Celsius, where we were headed towards more like 3.5 just a decade ago. That gives you a sense of the fact that we're making progress. We are moving away from fossil fuels, but we're not doing so fast enough to avert some of these very dangerous potential thresholds.
That's an important point, to perhaps take away that sense of helplessness, Michael, that often people feel. But at the same time, we are seeing this warming, more extreme weather. What are some of the mitigation efforts that you think we're going to see more and more of, especially for those who are most affected by the impact of extreme weather?
Yeah, well, when I talk about mitigation, I mean reducing carbon emissions. And I think you're asking about what we might call adaptation.
Yeah.
Like, how do we deal with the impacts that we are already dealing with? And certainly we're seeing those play out right now here in the form of those heat domes that you mentioned. We're about to see very oppressive heat. I live here in Philadelphia, a large urban city in the United States with a very substantial underserved population that is extremely vulnerable to heat stress. And that's a real threat to the people of this city. And we are seeing efforts here at the University of Pennsylvania, for example. We're involved in a project to create cooling centers people can retreat to. This is an example of one of the sorts of adaptive strategies that we're seeing in cities like Philadelphia. But we're going to have to see a whole lot more of that in the future to deal with what's coming.
Michael Mann, really good to get your analysis. Thank you again so much for joining us tonight on BBC News.
Thank you.